Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to knit swatches. First I will knit a flat swatch and then I will knit a swatch for when you're knitting in the round. For the flat swatch I will show you how to add a border so that the edges of the swatch will not roll up. If you're knitting in the round, I will show you a trick that will allow you to knit your swatch a lot faster. First, cast on 6 more stitches than the amount of stitches that is given as the gauge of your project. Those 6 stitches will be for the border of your swatch. I cast on 20 stitches. Next, turn and knit across all of the stitches. Knit 4 more rows in garter stitch to finish the border of your swatch, so just knit all of the stitches. Now we will start to knit the actual swatch. Knit the next row. This will be the first right side row. Turn and knit 3 stitches. Purl until you get to the last 3 stitches. Knit the last 3 stitches and turn. Repeat the last 2 rows until you have worked at least the amount of rows that is given as the gauge of your project. To finish the swatch, knit 5 more rows. And finally, bind off all of the stitches. To measure the gauge, you can then wash and block the swatch and then measure the stockinette portion inside the borders. If your project is knitted in the round, you will also need to knit in the round for the swatch, since most people knit with a different tension when they're knitting in the round. Take a circular needle and cast on at least the amount of stitches that is given in the gauge of your project, plus 4 stitches for the edges. I cast on 22 stitches. Knitting an entire tube for the gauge takes a bit of time, so I will show you a little trick that you can use so that you only have to knit half of the rounds. After the cast on, push the stitches down onto the other needle. Take the working yarn and knit the first stitch. To make sure that the float behind the work is long enough, spread the stitches and make sure that the float is at least as long as the stitches are wide. Knit the rest of the stitches. Push the stitches down onto the other needle so that you can start to knit on the other side again. That way we can simulate knitting in the round even though we only knit half of the round. Bring the working yarn to the right so that you can knit the first stitch. To make sure that the new float is as long as the previous float, I hold both of them with my right hand. That way, the float has the correct length and the working yarn is coming from the right side, which makes it a lot easier to knit the first stitch. Knit the rest of the stitches. Push the stitches down onto the other needle and repeat the same process until you have worked at least the amount of rounds that is given in the gauge of your project. So bring the working yarn to the right side and hold the floats with your right hand to make sure that the new float is long enough. Then knit across the stitches. With this technique, the first and last stitch of each round might be a little looser than the rest. That's why you cast it on 4 extra stitches. If the stitches bother you, you can pull on the floats one by one to tighten the first and last stitch of each round. After you are done with your swatch, just bind off all of the stitches. You can then wash and block the swatch so that you can measure it. If the floats are a bit too short, you can also just cut them before you measure the swatch. I hope this video was helpful and thanks for watching.